Okay, this is the second video. It is October 15th, 2020. We just had our second airdrop of our governance token, or of the funding token that is attached to our PSF governance token. This video is intended for Permissionless Software Foundation community members. The first video talked about the fun stuff, about the successes we had last quarter and the grants that we have queued up for this next quarter. This video is going to dive into the more boring stuff. What are we going to do with the funds left over from last quarter? What are some of the lessons we learned moving forward? So let's talk about that. What are we going to do with the funds left over from last quarter? There's about 45,000 PSF tokens that were so there's 100,000 tokens that are dropped every quarter. We had about a 90% participation rate, so about 90,000 of those tokens went to grants to fund work, and we have about 45,000, so about half of those tokens were unspent. And the reason they were unspent is that we had a lack of management bandwidth, and we also had a lack of qualified devs. This is a new community. We haven't been doing it for very long. Very few people know we exist. So we will ceremoniously burn these unspent tokens on November 1st when the grants for the next quarter get funded. And the reason we're going to do this is because that 100,000 token airdrop that goes to these grants, they dilute the value of the people who hold the tokens. So by taking them out of circulation, it makes the tokens that are still in circulation more valuable, and it doesn't dilute them. And this is the same idea of how we burn the tokens when people use our products in order to pay the developers who are paid in tokens. So burning is good. This is a good thing. We're trying to look after the membership and keep their tokens valuable. So that's why we're going to ceremoniously burn it. We've updated the business plan. We're going to do this every quarter. Every quarter, if we have unspent tokens, we're going to ceremoniously burn them at the start of the next quarter. And so that way there's no pressure in terms of overfunding a grant. We're just going to spend what we need to spend, and it'll all work out. Some lessons learned moving forward. We had a lot of successes, but it wasn't all roses. We're going to be reducing our scope. Lessons learned in Q3, we're going to reduce our scope. Q3, we had a lot of projects focused on R&D. There were some grants that didn't even get worked on because we couldn't find qualified developers with the right specialized skills to work on them. And some of those that we deprioritized were much more research and development. They weren't really going to increase the demand for the tokens. And we really need, if you watch the intro video to the PSF, we talk about how important it is to increase demand for tokens in order to ultimately pay the developers that are doing the work. And so Q4 will prioritize increasing demand for tokens. And there's fewer projects in Q4. And part of this is to reduce the scope, like I'm talking about, but it's also to improve management. We're sort of taking a quality over quantity approach this next quarter. And all the projects being funded are pretty much directly going to increase demand for PSF tokens. Sponsorship and consulting. So one of the things that we did not have much success with this quarter was the consulting. We were hoping that would spur demand for the tokens because consulting fees would go to burn tokens. And we very quickly realized that there is a conflict between open source work and the traditional freelance engineering or software development work, which I've done a lot of both. And the biggest difference is cultural. It's everything about remote open source development is asynchronous. I've said before, I'm the only American. Most of the developers are in either South America or Asia, or Europe. We're all just totally scattered all over the world, and so we have to work asynchronously. Like, we can't expect everyone to show up at a meeting at the same time. Everything we do has to be asynchronous. It has this is why we use the Trello board and the way we organize the work that we do, and we've had great success with it. But when you do freelance software development or consulting, businesses tend to work on timelines. They tend to be like, we need to start at this date, and we're going to end by this date, and we're going to accomplish these things in between. And that's not a good fit for the way this community is shaping up. So timelines do not work, but milestones do work. One of the successes we had with one of our sponsors was we set a date, and we set a specific amount of work to be done by that date. We didn't hit the date, but we didn't ask them for any more money. We agreed to keep working until we achieved the milestone, and that worked much better. And so as we go forward and work with sponsors, we're going to take a milestone-based approach to the work. One thing that's becoming apparent is that if we agree to do a project, I'll keep returning to this example because it's a good example of the sweep feature. If you go to wallet.fullstack.cash, someone sponsored the work to develop that feature of being able to sweep paper wallets and sweep tokens from a paper wallet. They wanted it, we wanted it. However, now that it exists and we're using it, who's going to maintain it? That maintenance burden is still unsolved. And right now that maintenance burden is falling on the permissionless software community. And that's okay, because that was a feature that we wanted for ourselves. It's going to make the web wallet more valuable. It's going to increase transactions and people using the web wallet. That's going to burn tokens and increase demand for tokens. So in Q4, we're moving away from consulting and we're focusing more on sponsorship. And roughly what that means is sponsorship requires both an intrinsic and an extrinsic motivation. So the extrinsic motivation is burning tokens. Someone's going to spend Bitcoin Cash and they're going to send them to the burn address, which will burn tokens and take them out of circulation and ultimately pay the developers who do the work. But there also needs to be intrinsic motivation. We need to the community needs to benefit from it. So the sweep example is another good example where that is a valuable resource for wallet.fullstack.cash. We would have wanted that feature anyways, and so it was a great partnership because we both benefited. And that's a non-monetary intrinsic motivation. So going forward, the sponsorships are going to require that there's an intrinsic and an extrinsic motivation for the Permissionless Software Foundation to do the work. We're also going to take a milestone-based approach to the project rather than a time-based approach. And as long as we stick to those two, I think it's okay if the maintenance burden falls on the PSF, which is a significant burden over a period of time, but if that burden increases demand for tokens, we can fund developers, and it's a net positive. So that's sort of one of the big lessons we learned this last quarter. So another thing that the core management team has been hashing out is what I'm coming to refer to as the responsibility ladder, or the progression of how a new community member moves through the community and takes on more responsibility. I've been greatly inspired by the work of McKeel Rogers, who was the manager for the Node.js Foundation and radically grew their contributor base. I've also been inspired by Nadia Ekbal and her most recent book, Working in Public. They both are thought leaders in the space on how do you organize open source communities, how do you give them increasing levels of responsibility, help the people who need help, and encourage the people who want to take on a leadership role to rise to the top and to take on extra responsibility, but do it in a careful way. And so what we're starting to sketch out here is a very rough progression. And so just roughly what we're starting to see, the pattern that's starting to emerge, is that we have members, and you know if you're a member or not a member because you either buy or earn tokens. That's how you know you're in the community or not in the community, is you possess tokens. You either bought them or you earned them. And then contributors, they earn tokens. So that's the difference between just a member who, say, has a token so that they can participate in the community feed or can stake tokens to have a website listed on Tor list. That's just a member. But a contributor is a developer or an artist or a writer or a video editor who has been contributing to the community, adding content, working primarily on code or promoting the code that we build, and has been earning tokens through their work. That's a contributor, so that's like the next level of responsibility. And contributors are managed by project manager. Right now, I'm the only project manager, and I am very careful to mentor the developers that are working under me, like Gary and Daniel and Nicholas and the other developers who are working for bounties. The responsibility falls on me to break these larger projects up into smaller tasks, to manage the work, make sure they get done in a timely fashion, answer questions when they have them, help the developers get unstuck. These are my responsibilities as a project manager. But what I want to do is, as members become contributors and then want to take on a bigger leadership role and maybe have a good idea that could increase demand for PSF tokens, we can do a grant and they can start out as contributors but then work their way into project management where they own a project. Like, let's say Torlist just takes off. I'd love to see Gary just manage other developers under him in order to keep that website functional and continuously improving and continuously increasing demand for PSF tokens. And I'd like him, in that situation where we see success and increased demand, I want him to start to basically function, or someone like that. I want them to function independently. And so we have all these. Hopefully, long term, what we end up with is several project managers that have their own budgets and are largely answerable only to themselves and the wider community by reporting on success metrics, and so that there is no central point of failure. The organization's largely horizontally managed. There would be a core, administrative group that is really just focused on administration and not so much management, whereas we'd start to spin off these products like Torlist and message.fullstack.cache and wallet.fullstack.cache and fullstack.cache. These could all be their own little independent organizations that are all tied together through the PSF community and the PSF token. So that's the responsibility ladder. And so we've had some more successes with this core management and admin. All of our wallets are multi-sig now. So if I got hit by a bus, nothing would stop. Salaries would still of tokens would still get rewarded for bounties. Bills would still get paid. The token airdrop would continue. So I have eliminated myself as a central point of failure, and I've split up the responsibility. I couldn't embezzle funds if I wanted to at this point, and neither could anybody else. We're all using multi-sig wallets, which is an industry best practice. So I'm very proud about that we accomplished this last quarter. That was a big step forward in regards to reducing any single point of failure for the community. We've also created a war chest, which is also a multi-signature wallet. And the keys have been widely distributed for that, and that's there for emergencies in case it's not very big yet because the token price isn't very high yet, and but it's there if there's like a crash in the in the token price. We have some funds there to help it out. If someone gets arrested, for or something like that, those funds would be there to support these core developers if they got into trouble directly for working for this community. And again, that's the benefit there is that it's a multi-sig wallet. No government can come to any one of us and force us to give them the money in that war chest because we're not physically able to comply. It doesn't matter what they do. So this is a important cypherpunk ethos that we push forward, that we use encryption to enforce our sovereignty, our right to privacy, our right to free speech, and money is an act of free speech. And our communication tools are getting better. In the previous video, I gave a demonstration of the community feed on message.fullstack.cache and how we're going to soon have end-to-end encrypted private email-like service where you use Bitcoin Cash addresses instead of email addresses. And then we'll also have an address book, obviously, so you don't have to remember everybody's Bitcoin Cash address. You'll be able to use short, human-readable, like somebody's name, and the computer will just match that with a Bitcoin Cash address, like your private personal one. And so the stage is really set for growing the community. We've got better communication tools. We are starting to create tools for the gray market, and I expect, for a great example is wallet.fullstack.cache. That's available over Tor. We're encouraging businesses to white label it so that they can just add the value for their business to an already functional Bitcoin Cash and SLP wallet. So that's the plan moving forward. And we have had excellent success, and we've set the stage for additional growth. And I think, this was just to talk about the community feed, which I did in the last video. And just can't say enough about this. So this idea of merit, which is token quantity times token age. I talked again in the last video about creating a VIP feed, which would be the same feed but with, say, like a minimum maybe 10,000 merit. Like you have to have a merit score of 10,000 in order. So you either have to have 10,000 tokens or one token that's 10,000 blocks old or something in between in order for your message to show up on that feed. And then we're also going to have end-to-end encrypted private messages. Nothing to install. You can access this on a smartphone. Go right there, paste in someone's Bitcoin Cash address, subject message, send it to them. Only they can decrypt it. And it's going to be so convenient and secure. It's going to be great. I'm really excited about it. Okay, so that wraps up this video, kind of on the deeper governance issues and lessons learned over this last quarter. And how we're going to push forward.